Ancient Greek is the form of Greek used during the periods of time spanning c. the 9th–6th century BC, c. the 5th–4th century BC, and c. the 3rd century BC–6th century AD in ancient Greece and the ancient world. It was predated in the 2nd millennium BC by Mycenaean Greek. The language of the Hellenistic phase is known as Koine or Biblical Greek, while the language from the late period onward features no considerable differences from medieval Greek. Koine is regarded as a separate historical stage of its own, although in its earlier form, it closely resembled the classical. Prior to the Koine period, Greek of the classic and earlier periods included several regional dialects. Ancient Greek was the language of Homer and of classical Athenian historians, playwrights, and philosophers. It has contributed many words to English vocabulary and has been a standard subject of study in educational institutions of the West since the Renaissance. This article primarily contains information about the epic and classical phases of the language. Dialects. The origins, early form and development of the Hellenic language family are not well understood because of the lack of contemporaneous evidence. There are several theories about what Hellenic dialect groups that may have existed between the divergence of early Greek-like speech from the common Proto-Indo-European language. They have the same general outline but differ in some of the detail. The only attested dialect from this period is Mycenaean, but its relationship to the historical dialects and the historical circumstances of the times imply that the overall groups already existed in some form. The major dialect groups of the ancient Greek period can be assumed to have developed not later than 1120 BC, at the time of the Dorian invasion, and their first appearances as precise alphabetic writing began in the 8th century BC. The invasion would not be Dorian unless the invaders had some cultural relationship to the historical Dorians. Moreover, the invasion is known to have displaced population to the later Attic Ionic regions, who regarded themselves as descendants of the population displaced by or contending with the Dorians. The Greeks of this period considered there to be three major divisions of all the Greek Theopli Euro-Dorians, Aeolians and Ionians, each with their own defining and distinctive dialects. Allowing for their oversight of Arcadian, an obscure mountain dialect, and Cyprian, far from the center of Greek scholarship, this division of people and language is quite similar to the results of modern archaeological linguistic investigation. One standard formulation for the dialects is, West versus non-West Greek is the strongest marked and earliest division, with non-West in subsets of Ionic Attic and Aeolic versus Arcado-Cyprian, or Aeolic and Arcado-Cyprian versus Ionic Attic. Often non-West is called East Greek. The Arcado-Cyprian group apparently descended more closely from the Mycenaean Greek of the Bronze Age. Boeotian had come under a strong Northwest Greek influence, and can in some respects be considered a transitional dialect. Thessalian likewise had come under Northwest Greek influence, though to a lesser degree. Pamphylian, spoken in a small area on the southwestern coast of Asia Minor and little preserved in inscriptions, may be either a fifth major dialect group, or it is Mycenaean Greek overlaid by Doric, with a non-Greek native influence. Ancient Macedonian was an Indo-European language closely related to Greek, but its exact relationship is unclear because of insufficient data, possibly a dialect of Greek, a sibling language to Greek, or a close cousin to Greek, and perhaps related to some extent, to Thracian and Phrygian languages. The Pella-Curse tablet is one of many finds that support the idea that the ancient Macedonian language is closely related to the Doric Greek dialect. Most of the dialect subgroups listed above had further subdivisions, generally equivalent to a city-state and its surrounding territory, or to an island. Doric notably had several intermediate divisions as well, into Island Doric, Southern Peloponnesus Doric, and Northern Peloponnesus Doric. The Lesbian dialect was a member of the Aegean Asiatic Aeolic subgroup. All the groups were represented by colonies beyond Greece proper as well, and these colonies generally developed local characteristics, often under the influence of settlers or neighbors speaking different Greek dialects. The dialects outside the Ionic group are known mainly from inscriptions, notable exceptions being fragments of the works of the poetess Sappho from the island of Lesbos and the poems of the Boeotian poet, Pindar. After the conquests of Alexander the Great in the late 300s BC, a new international dialect known as Koine or Common Greek developed, largely based on Attic Greek, but with influence from other dialects. This dialect slowly replaced most of the older dialects, although Doric dialect has survived to the present in the form of the Tsakonian dialect of modern Greek, spoken in the region of modern Sparta. Doric has also passed down its aorist terminations into most verbs of Demotic Greek. By about the 500s AD, the Koine had slowly metamorphosized into medieval Greek. Sound changes. See Proto-Greek for a description of sound changes from Proto-Indo-European up through attested Ancient Greek. Phonology. The pronunciation of post-classic Greek changed considerably from Ancient Greek, although the orthography still reflects features of the older language. For a detailed description on the phonology changes from ancient to Hellenistic periods of the Greek language, see the article on Koine Greek. The examples below are intended to represent Attic Greek in the 5th century BC. Although ancient pronunciation can never be reconstructed with certainty, Greek in particular is very well documented from this period, and there is little disagreement among linguists as to the general nature of the sounds that the letters represented. Phonemic inventory. Consonants. Angstrom occurred as an allophone of used before velars and as an allophone of before nasals. Was probably voiceless when word initial, vowels, raised to a, probably by the 4th century BC. Sound changes. Assimilation. In verb conjugation, one consonant often comes up against the other. Various Sandy rules apply. Rules. Most basic rule: when two sounds appear next to each other, the first assimilates in voicing and aspiration to the second. This applies fully to stops. Fricatives assimilate only in voicing, sonorants do not assimilate. Before an, velars become k, labials become p, and dentals disappear. Before a, velars become k degree, labials become p degree, and dentals become s. Before an, velars become e, nasal plus velar becomes e, labials become m, dentals become s, other sonorants remain the same. Compensatory lengthening. Certain vowels historically underwent compensatory lengthening in certain contexts. Sometimes lengthen to e or a, and become the closed values, e and a in the open ones, a, and ee, depending on time period. Vowel shift. The Proto-Greek long vowel was shifted to a in the Attic dialect, except after /ei/. In the Ionic dialect, it shifted in all environments, but in Doric and Aeolic, it did not shift at all. Morphology. Greek, like all of the older Indo-European languages, is highly inflected. It is highly archaic in its preservation of Proto-Indo-European forms. In ancient Greek, nouns have 5 cases, 3 genders, and 3 numbers. Verbs have 4 moods, 3 voices, as well as 3 persons and various other forms. Verbs are conjugated through 7 combinations of tenses and aspect. The present, future and imperfect are imperfective in aspect. The aorist. A present perfect, pluperfect and future perfect. Most tenses display all 4 moods and 3 voices, although there is no future subjunctive or imperative. Also, there is no imperfect subjunctive, optative or imperative. There are infinitives and participles corresponding to the finite combinations of tense, aspect and voice. Augment. The indicative of past tenses adds a prefix, called the augment. This was probably originally a separate word, meaning something like then, added because tenses in PIE had primarily aspectual meaning. The augment is added to the indicative of the aorist, imperfect and pluperfect, but not to any of the other forms of the aorist. There are 2 kinds of augment in Greek, syllabic and quantitative. The syllabic augment is added to stems beginning with consonants, and simply prefixes e. The quantitative augment is added to stems beginning with vowels, and involves lengthening the vowel, a, e, aaa, I, aaa, o, angstrom and angstrom u, angstrom and angstrom, IAAI, IAAI or AE, OI angstrom I, or AAU or UAAU or UU. Some verbs augment irregularly. The most common variation is EAAE. The irregularity can be explained diachronically by the loss of S between vowels. In verbs with a prefix, the augment is placed not at the start of the word, but between the prefix and the original verb. For example, I florin, I squared I permel goes to I florin I squared I plus or minus I oi 1/2 in the aorist. Following Homer's practice, the augment is sometimes not made in poetry, especially epic poetry. The augment sometimes substitutes for reduplication. See below. Reduplication: almost all forms of the perfect, pluperfect and future perfect reduplicate the initial syllable of the verb stem. There are three types of reduplication: syllabic reduplication, most verbs beginning with a single consonant, or a cluster of a stop with a sonorant, add a syllable consisting of the initial consonant followed by e. An aspirated consonant, however, reduplicates in its unaspirated equivalent, Grassmann's law. Augment: verbs beginning with a vowel, as well as those beginning with a cluster other than those indicated previously reduplicate in the same fashion as the augment. This remains in all forms of the perfect, not just the indicative. Attic reduplication: some verbs beginning with an a, e or o, followed by a sonorant, reduplicate by adding a syllable consisting of the initial vowel and following consonant, and lengthening the following vowel. Hence an era, an a an n, ola l, eda d. This is not actually specific to Attic Greek, despite its name. But it was generalized in Attic. This originally involved reduplicating a cluster consisting of a laryngeal and sonorant. Hence ha-florin la ha-florin lea-florin la ola l with normal Greek development of laryngeals. Irregular duplication can be understood diachronically. For example, lambana has the perfect stem oilafer because it was originally slambana, with perfect selafer, becoming oilafer through compensatory lengthening. Reduplication is also visible in the present tense stems of certain verbs. These stems add a syllable consisting of the root's initial consonant followed by I. A nasal stop appears after the reduplication in some verbs. Writing system. Ancient Greek was written in the Greek alphabet, with some variation among dialects. Early texts are written in boustrophedon style, but left to right became standard during the Classic period. Modern editions of ancient Greek texts are usually written with accents and breathing marks, interword spacing, modern punctuation, and sometimes mixed case, but these were all introduced later. Example text: the beginning of Homer's Iliad exemplifies the Archaic period of ancient Greek. The beginning of Apology by Plato exemplifies Attic Greek from the classical period of ancient Greek, a 1/2 I to the first I 1/4 a 1/2 squared I 1/2 a 1/2 I 1/4 I micro ai, a 1/2 a 1/4 I 1/2 I micron I 1/2 I plus or minus ai to the first, I euro I micron I euro I 1/2 I plus or minus I micro a 1/2 I euro a 1/2 I. A paragraph I 1/2 a 1/4 I 1/4 a paragraph I 1/2 I plus or minus I cubed I permil I 1/2. IA 1/2 IA 1/4 paragraph II plus or minus a 1/4 I cubed a 1/2 1/4 IA 1/2 I 1/2 II plus or minus a 1/2 paragraph I plus or minus a 1/2 IA 1/2 IA 1/2 I euro I plus or minus a 1/2 IA paragraph. I 1/2 a 1/2 euro II cubed IA 1/4 I 1/4 I plus or minus IIIA 1/4 I euro I micron II plus or minus II 1/4 II 1/2 IA 1/2 II permil I euro I to the first II plus or minus I 1/2 a paragraph IA 1/4 II micron I cubed II 1/2 ishi plus or minus II to the first a 1/4 euro II cubed I micro a 1/2 female a 1/4 I euro I micro a 1/4 degree I euro I micro AI 1/2 IA 1/2 IA 1/2 squared I 1/2 I micro a 1/4 degree I registered trademark II plus or minus I florin I to the first I 1/2. Transliterated into the Latin alphabet using a modern version of the Erasmian scheme, hectocubed T Maen Humia registered trademark S, AANDRES Afan or registered trademark OI, pepper cubed NTHATE hupus squared Tawan Ema N Katagar cubed Ra N, Uko registered trademark Da, eager to the first DON core auto squared S hup auto Enola Gui Mortoa Apelava cubed Ma N, Hotar Pithana SA copyright Legan. Cortoyalathar copyright SGE Ha SA copyright Poapia registered trademark N Auda N era, Kassan. Using the IPA, hectocubed T men Himai Euro S, EIEI Euro NDRES 8 degree A na equal or more than EOI, pepper cubed NTE degree 8 hypo TEIEI Euro NMIEI Euro N Kata E equal or more than cubed re EN, AKR cubed ADAR. E degree Celsius E dar EI Euro N Kalioite Toshippo ITEIEI Euro N Ola A Maui Tai EI Euro Epilate degree A cubed BN, HUITEE Pi degree A NIEI Euro SA copyright Li on Cortoyala T degree A copyright ZEESA copyright Poe Pi Euro NA Dernier Riikasan. Translated into English, what you, men of Athens, have learned from my accusers, I do not know. But I, for my part, nearly forgot who I was thanks to them, since they spoke so persuasively. And yet, of the truth, they have spoken, one might say, nothing at all. Modern use. The study of ancient Greek and European countries in addition to Latin occupied an important place in the syllabus from the Renaissance until the beginning of the 20th century. Ancient Greek is still taught as a compulsory or optional subject especially at traditional or elite schools throughout Europe, such as public schools and grammar schools in the United Kingdom. It is compulsory in the Liceo Classico in Italy, in the Gymnasium in the Netherlands, in some classes in Austria, in Croatia in Klasična gimnazija and it is optional in the Humanistisches Gymnasium in Germany. Indiana, 2006/07. 15,000 pupils studied ancient Greek in Germany according to the Federal Statistical Office of Germany, and 280,000 pupils studied it in Italy. It is a compulsory subject alongside Latin in the humanities branch of Spanish Bachillerato. Ancient Greek is also taught at most major universities worldwide, often combined with Latin as part of classics. It will also be taught in state primary schools in the UK, to boost children a Euro unregistered trademark S language skills, and will be offered as a foreign language to pupils in all primary schools from 2014 as part of a major drive to boost education standards, together with Latin, Mandarin, French, German, Spanish, and Italian. Ancient Greek is also taught as a compulsory subject in gymnasia and lyceum in Greece. Ancient Greek is often used in the coinage of modern technical terms in the European languages, see English words of Greek origin. Modern authors rarely write in Ancient Greek, though Jan Kahan registered trademark Asadlo wrote some poetry and prose in the language, and some volumes of Asterix have been written in Attic Greek and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone has been translated into Ancient Greek. Alfred Raelfs included a preface, a short history of the Septuagint text, and other front matter translated into Ancient Greek in his 1935 edition of the Septuagint. Robert Hannett also included the introductory remarks to the 2006 revised Raelfs Euro-Hannett edition in the language as well. Ancient Greek is also used by organizations and individuals, mainly Greek, who wish to denote their respect, admiration or preference for the use of this language. This use is sometimes considered graphical, nationalistic or funny. In any case, the fact that modern Greeks can still wholly or partly understand texts written in non-archaic forms of ancient Greek shows the affinity of modern Greek language to its ancestral predecessor. An isolated community near Trabzon, Turkey, an area where Pontic Greek is spoken, has been found to speak a variety of Greek that has parallels, both structurally and in its vocabulary, to ancient Greek not present in other varieties. As few as 5,000 people speak the dialect but linguists believe that it is the closest living language to ancient Greek. Latinized forms of ancient Greek roots are used in many of the scientific names of species and in scientific terminology. See also, Exploring the Ancient Greek Language and Culture, Greek Alphabet, Greek Declension, Greek Diacritics, Mycenaean Greek Language, Koine Greek, Medieval Greek, Modern Greek, Greek language, list of Greek phrases, list of Greek words with English derivatives, Koine Greek spoken, references. Further reading, P. Chantrain, Dictionnaire copyright-tymologique de la langue grecque, Klingsiek, Paris. Athenes. A series of textbooks on ancient Greek published for school use, Hansen, Hardy and Quinn, Gerald M. Greek, an intensive course, Fordham University Press, Easterling, P. and Handley, C. Greek Scripts, an illustrated introduction. London, Society for the Promotion of Hellenic Studies, 2001. ISBN 0-900-2984-17-9, external links, online Greek resources, dictionaries, grammar, virtual libraries, fonts, etc. Alphaeus combines LSJ, Autenrieth, Smith's Grammar and Inflection tables in a browser add-on for use on any website. Ancient Greek Basic Lexicon at the Global Lexicostatistical Database, Ancient Greek Swadesh list of basic vocabulary words, grammar learning, a more extensive grammar of the ancient Greek language written by J. Rietveld, recitation of classics books, Perseus Greek dictionaries, Greek-language.com. Information on the history of the Greek language, application of modern linguistics to the study of Greek, and tools for learning Greek, free lessons in ancient Greek, bilingual libraries, forum, a critical survey of websites devoted to ancient Greek tutorials. Berkeley Language Center of the University of California, a digital tutorial for ancient Greek based on White's first Greek book, New Testament Greek, Acropolis World News. A summary of the latest world news in ancient Greek, Juan Kodich, University of St. Andrews, Classical Texts, Perseus. Greek and Roman Materials, Ancient Greek Texts,